as integral minus infinity plus infinity of mod f of s the whole square ds. What it means? It means even the whether it's the original function or it is a transformed function, whatever it may be, even after the transformation, see, modulus square is nothing but the weight of the function. So usually, integral of a function is nothing but that integral of a function is nothing but the area covered by the function uh, under a interval, right? So it's something like a weight of the function or density of the function, right? So here, particularly, we take the modulus value. Particularly, we take the modulus value. You may ask, what is the meaning of modulus value? I already told you mod x is nothing but in real number, right? So remember, in real number, I told mod x is nothing but x when x is positive, and mod x is minus x when x is negative. That means, suppose x is equals to 2 means mod 2 is equals to 2 itself. Mod 2 is equals to 2 because x is positive. So mod x is x itself. But mod of minus 2, that is when x is negative, mod x is equals to minus x. Minus x means minus of x. What is x? X is itself a negative one. So now minus of minus become plus. So mod of minus 2 become plus 2. So this is the idea in mod function for real number, right? So here you may ask, sir, so if you apply the mod function, it became positive, and if you when you square the number also, it became positive. So when we put both modulus as well as the square, so in real number system it's okay, right? But in real number system, even if you square 2, it will become 4. Even if you square minus 2, it become 4. So always, if you square a real number, it became a positive number. But here you should learn one thing: all our f of x or f of x are maybe complex valued functions also. That is e power ix, right? It may be f of x, maybe e power ix. E power ix means it is maybe cos x plus I sin x. So whenever you write a complex number, write this: z equals to a plus ib. Or if you write a complex function, f of x is equals to 1. F of x is equals to cos x plus I sin x. If you write like this, then the complex conjugate of this, the complex conjugate means f of x bar. That is f of x bar. Sometimes it may denoted as f of x star. F of x sometimes star is cos x minus I sin x. That is this is the complex conjugate, right? So sometimes they use the notation bar, or sometimes they use the notation star that denotes the complex conjugate of the complex valued function. That is, if original function is cos x plus I sin x, then its complex conjugate is nothing but wherever I is there, I is the complex number, I is replaced by minus I. That is called complex conjugate. So the same thing in complex number also. If z is there, then z bar is denoted as a minus ib. So this is complex number, this is complex valued function. So what is z? Z and z bar are complex numbers, and f of x is a complex valued function. Complex valued function. But whether it is a complex number or complex valued function, that z multiply z with z bar or z with z star. Sometimes they use bar or sometimes they use star. That gives a plus ib into a minus ib. A plus ib into a minus ib. This multiplied with this, right? Z into z bar. So it is simply a plus ab into a minus ab formula. That is a square minus b square. That means a square minus b square. B square means ib square. Ib square. But a square is as it is, a square minus I square. I is nothing but square root of minus 1. I is nothing but square root of minus 1. So I square value is minus 1. I is square root of minus 1. So I square should be 1. Minus 1. So I square value is minus 1. Already when minus sign is there. So it becomes a square plus b square. So z bar. Z into z bar is called as a square minus ib the whole square. That can be written as a square plus b square. A square plus b square. Right? So this z bar is denoted as a square plus b square, where a is the real part of the complex number z and b is the imaginary part of the complex number. So this is a real number. In general, A is a real number, B is a real number. A plus IB is a complex number, but A and B are real numbers. So if you square this number and square this two real numbers, both will be positive only, and the summation also will be a positive number. That is denoted as mod Z. That is denoted as mod Z square. That is denoted as mod Z square. Right? So mod Z square is nothing but A square plus B square. So otherwise they denote mod Z as square root of A square plus B square. So for any complex number, the modulus is defined as square root of the square of the real part plus the square of the complex part. Otherwise, if you put square here, you can remove the square root, right? So mod Z square is A square plus B square. Otherwise, mod Z is square root of A square plus B square. Mod Z is square root of A square plus B square. Mod Z is square root of A square plus B square. The same thing is here, right? So mod Z is nothing but the weight of the complex number. Similarly, mod f of x is the weight of the complex valued function. So what this property says, whether it's the original function or the transformed function, okay, so the both may be complex valued functions, but the magnitude of both the functions remains same. That is the weightage even after transformation, right? The weight of the function, right, as I told already, right? So even if they transform the function, right, the properties of f of x should be old for the properties of f of s. That should be there. So one of the property is the weightage, right? So or it is called as density of the function. So both should be same. So this is the idea behind the partials theorem, right? So now proof is very simple. I explained the proof, right? For your level, you just even you can't able to understand what is the meaning of density of a function, all these things. You just remember this relation, right? In some book they put 1 by 2 pi here, right? So if they put 1 by 2 pi in the formula, meaning is in the Fourier transform definition they are not putting any constant, but when they apply inverse Fourier definition they put 1 by 2 pi. They put 1 by 2 pi. So when we apply Fourier transform definition, they are not putting any constant before the integral, but when we apply inverse Fourier transform, they put 1 by 2 pi. In that case, here also 1 by 2 pi will come, but in this book it is not there. Why it is not there? Because here they are using 1 by root 2 pi for Fourier transform definition and another 1 by root 2 pi for inverse Fourier transform definition. So they split the constant 1 by 2 pi as 1 by root 2 pi for Fourier transform and another 1 by root 2 pi for inverse Fourier transform. So Fourier transform and inverse Fourier transform having 1 by root 2 pi, 1 by root 2 pi itself inside their formula itself. Inside there, so what is f of x? F of x is nothing but f inverse of f of s. So f of s formula also inside 1 by root 2 pi, f of x also inside 1 by root 2 pi, so that both are both side 1 by root 2 pi is there, so it is cancelled out, so that here nothing is there, right? But originally, okay, but originally, if you are not using any constant in the square root, any constant in the Fourier transform definition and put 1 by 2 pi in the inverse Fourier transform definition, then we have to put 1 by 2 pi here, right? But here we are following this notation that putting 1 by root 2 pi on both sides. So this no need, this no need. Okay. So now what is the proof? The proof is started from the convolution theorem that we discussed day before yesterday. What is convolution theorem? So convolution is a representation, right? It is a integral representation. So last class I explained, right, what is convolution theorem. So it is not related with Fourier transform. It is a general definition. For you can take any two functions and you can define convolution of two functions as nothing but the integral of product of the two functions in this manner, right? Where t is the running variable and x is like a constant here, right? So from that we proved the convolution theorem. What is convolution theorem? Right? Whenever we take two functions and finding the convolution of the two functions, finding the Fourier transform of the convolution of two functions is same as finding the product of the transform. Finding the product of the transform, right? Remember, if you add two functions or subtract two functions and then finding the Fourier transform is same as finding the Fourier transform separately and then adding, right? In that case, it's good. But when you find the product of two functions, but when you find the product of two functions, f of x dot g of x, so f of x and g of x means product of two functions, and finding the Fourier transform of product of two functions, that is not equals to f of s and g of s, f of s into g of s. This is last class I told, right? So if you find product of two functions and find the Fourier transform, is not equals to the products. But what is equals to the products? If you find the Fourier transform of the convolution of two functions, that is equals to their products. That only we proved in the last class. So that only we are going to start with here. So by convolution theorem, Fourier transform of convolution of two functions is nothing but product of the transforms. Now if you take that Fourier transform on the other side, take this f on the other side, then it becomes f inverse. So f inverse of f of s into g of s. Then you have to put the definition of Fourier convolution, just that we defined last class. Fourier transform, convolution of two functions is 1 by root 2 pi of this, right? So we can define any manner. We can take f of x minus s or g of x minus s. F convolution g is same as g convolution f, right? So those who attended last class, they know all this thing, right? So we just put the definition of Fourier transform here. Who is joining now? Okay, because this is last class. Okay, right? So we just put the Fourier transform, inverse Fourier transform definition in the right hand side. 1 by root 2 pi minus 52 plus infinity f of s g of s e power I minus isx dx, right? But in some book they put plus minus in the Fourier transform definition and plus in the inverse Fourier transform definition. But as I told in the last class, both inverse Fourier transform definition and inverse Fourier transform definition complement to each other. So if you put e power isx in Fourier transform, then you can put e power minus isx in inverse Fourier transform. Suppose if you put e power minus isx in the Fourier transform definition, then you have to put e power plus isx in the inverse Fourier transform, right? But this author uses plus isx for Fourier transform definition and minus isx for inverse Fourier transform definition, so that here e power minus isx is there. And left hand side is the definition of convolution theorem, convolution statement, right? Okay, now, so this 1 by root 2 pi, 1 to root 2 pi cancel out, no problem. Now you have to do certain things, only simple substitution, right? Here we are not do any simplification, nothing. You have to do simply substitution. So one thing you should understand, the left hand side is a function of, a variable is a t variable, and right hand side the variable is s, right? So both the left hand side and the right hand side, x is like a constant, because here the running variable is t, here the running variable is s, so x is like a constant. So in order to prove this, right, they take x is equals to 0, because in this relation there is no exponential function. We have only f, right? There is no exponential function. So if you want to remove exponential function, we can put some value for x. So if we take x is equals to 0, then automatically e power 0 is 1. So nicely we can remove that e power exponential function. We can get 1 from that. So first substitution is we have to put x is equals to 0. So if you put x equal to 0, this e power x minus isx becomes 1 in the right hand side, and in the left hand side this part becomes 0. So here g of x minus t become g of minus t. So these two things will happen when we put x is equals to 0. So that only here in the next line, when you put x is equal to 0, right, here it becomes 0 minus t, so it is minus t, and here e power 0 becomes 1, right? Then the next thing, one more substitution we have to do, then we can prove the theorem, right? So as you see in the theorem, right, there is only one f and one f of s. There is no g. So we have to assume for g also, right? Since by definition of convolution, f and g are any two functions. F and g are any two functions. So we can define g in any manner, right? G can be anything. So here, for our convenience, we define g as f of minus t star or bar, right? What is the meaning? Right? Suppose if g of t is cos t plus I sin t. Suppose g of t is cos t plus I sin t. Then what is this? F minus t of bar. F minus t of bar means, right, wherever t is there, you have to replace t as minus t. That means you have to write cos of minus t plus I sine of minus t. That is the meaning of putting t as minus t. So putting t as minus t means this, right? And then what is the meaning of bar? Bar is nothing but the complex conjugate. Sometimes it is noted by star. That means wherever I is there, that should be replaced by minus I. That should be replaced by minus I. So, right? So if the original function is like this, f of t, suppose the original function f of t is cos t minus cos t plus I sin t, then the g of t, then the g of t is nothing but, then the g of t is nothing but wherever in f of t, t is there, change t as minus t, that thing. Then wherever in f of t, take the complex conjugate. So in f of t, if it is I sin t, in f of t, if it is cos t plus I sin t means, then it becomes cos t minus I sin t. So that is g of t, right? So they define g of t as f of minus t bar, right? That is the variable becomes negative and they take the complex conjugate also, right? So why they do like this? If we define f g of t like this, then since g of t is f of minus t bar, then if you put t as minus t, then this t as minus of minus t become plus t, right? So here they change the variable t as minus t. So for t, it is minus t. For minus t, it becomes minus of minus t, minus of minus t, so that it becomes plus t, right? So now two things are there, right? G of t is f of bar minus t and g of minus t is f of t bar, right? Now we just consider one thing, right? As I told already, here only small f and capital F is there, so there is no need for small g and capital G. So we have to replace capital G and small g with some other thing, right? So they take g of s. What is g of x by definition? G of x is nothing but the Fourier transform of small g of x. But what is small g of x? By definition, now we define small g of x as f of x wherever the variable, if it is t means minus t, here x means minus x and bar, right? So now what is g of s? G of s is nothing but Fourier transform of g of x. That is same as Fourier transform of f of minus x bar. But what is f of minus x bar? You just to see the property we have seen in the last class, that is 10 properties we have seen. Yes, the 10 properties we have seen in the last class. In that 10 property, there's in the 9th property, we'll go there. Okay. In the 9th property, there is one statement is there, right? So this we seen in the last class, right? If Fourier transform of f of x is f of s, then Fourier transform of f of minus x, right? F of minus x become f of s plus star, right? If it is plus x, it is f of minus s bar, but Fourier transform of f of minus x bar become f of s bar. This proof we have seen in property number 4. That property we have to use now. That property we have to use now. So by property 9, Fourier transform of f of x bar, sorry, f of minus x bar is nothing but the convolution of f of s, right? Otherwise you can say the convolution of f of Fourier transform of f of minus x is nothing but the convolution of f of s. So g of s can be written as f of s bar, right? So in place of g of s, we can put f of s bar. And then in place of g of minus t, right? In place of left hand side, so right hand side, in place of g of s, we put f of s bar. Similarly, in the left hand side, in place of g of minus t, using this relation, we can put f of t bar. F of t bar. So this become f of s bar, this become f of t bar. So now what is this? This is f of t function, f of t bar. That is this complex conjugate. F of s is a complex valued function, f of s bar is complex conjugate. Now only I told you take any complex number or complex valued function, multiply it with its complex conjugate, then it's nothing but the mod square. That is modulus value, the square of the modulus value of the complex number or complex valued function. So whether it is a complex number or complex valued function, so if we write f of t multiplied with f of t bar, then become mod of f of t square. Mod of f of t. In place of z, f of t is there. So f of t into f of t bar becomes mod of f of t square. Similarly, f of s into f of s bar is mod of f of s square. So both sides same. So this is the final thing of the partials theorem. So it says as density of the function, both are same, right? Okay, good. So now the same thing for Fourier cosine and Fourier sine transforms also, right? I already told you what is Fourier cosine, Fourier sine transform. Whenever the function f of x is even, then we can define Fourier cosine transform. Similarly, whenever the function f of x is a odd function, then we can define Fourier sine transform. Fourier sine transform. Then what is the representation of Fourier transform? Sorry, partial theorem in when Fourier cosine and Fourier transform, right? So this is the partial theorem for general Fourier transform. So here f of x may be even or odd or neither odd not even. But if f of x is a odd even function and we can find Fourier cosine transform of that function, then the partial identity for Fourier cosine transform is same thing, right? But in place of general Fourier transform, it is Fourier cosine transform, right? And as I told already, for odd even functions are defined only in the half of the interval. The other half is nothing but 2 times multiplied, right? 2 times multiplied. So in that case, the interval is not from -infinity to +infinity. It is from 0 to infinity. It is from 0 to infinity. That is the same thing is for odd function also. Whenever f of x is odd, we can find Fourier sine transform. F of s is nothing but Fourier sine transform of the function f of x, since f of x is odd. And then the partial identity for the this odd function is again 0 to infinity mod fx square, 0 to infinity mod fs square dx, right? So all these results will be helpful to you to do certain problems. So not only that, if you take any two functions, just like right now any two function f and g, and if you multiply both the function f and g, and if you integrate from 0 to infinity, right? But both f and g should be even function. That is very, very important, right? Then we can find Fourier cosine transform of the two function f and g, right? Even in that case also, if you multiply two even functions and integrate it, is same as multiplying two Fourier quadrant transform and integrate it, right? Don't confuse this with convolution theorem, because in convolution theorem, you may ask, sir, you only told Fourier transform of convolution of product of two functions cannot be equals to the product of the transforms. But you are telling here product of two functions is only product of two function, not Fourier transform. So if you multiply product of two function, it has a density that is measured by this integral. But right hand side says even after transforming f into capital F and g into capital G, that is after transforming the function into Fourier transform, and still if you multiplied it, the density of the two functions remains same, right? So further a small proof is there, right? This proof will helpful to you to solve one or two problems. So we see this proof for some 2 more minutes, and then we see some 2 or 3 problems, right? So by definition, what is Fourier cosine transform, right? For any function, you have put the function. If it is f of x, you have to put f of x. If you d of x, you have to put g of x. And in place of e power isx, you have to put cos sx for Fourier cosine transform, sin sx for Fourier sine transform. That is the only change, right? Here 1 by root 2 pi will come, but here root of 2 pi will come. In constant, instead of 1 by root 2 pi, here root of 2 by pi will come. Then in integral, then in the interval value, instead of -infinity to +infinity, it is 0 to infinity will come. So these two things are common for Fourier cosine and Fourier sine. Then in Fourier cosine, in place of e power isx, cos sx will come. In place of in Fourier sine transform, In place of e power sx, sin sx will come. So this is Fourier cosine transform, so that I take cos sx. So by definition, Fourier cosine transform of function g of x is this, right? Now you take the RHS. In order to prove, you take the RHS. So RHS is FCS, GCS, this. So by definition, GCS is nothing but Fourier cosine transform of g of x. This is nothing but this. Fourier cosine transform of GCS means Fourier cosine transform of g of x, right? So by definition, Fourier cosine transform of g of x is this, root of 2 by pi g of x cos x dx, right? Okay. Now listen carefully. So we apply the definition here and right here. So this is FCS as it is. In place of GCS, we apply this definition, right? So now you just see there are two variables. One is x, another one is s. So x is inside, s is outside, right? So now what you have to do now, you just do the transformation. You just do the transformation like this, right? What you have to do now, you take ds inside and take dx outside. So if you take ds inside, all the functions related to s should comes inside. So FCS is a function of s, so it comes inside. Cos xx is a function of x, so it should come inside ds. Or you take dx outside. So if you take dx outside, only functions related with x can be taken outside. So g of x is this, right? So here you take g of x outside and take f of s inside. Similarly, here d of s inside, d of x outside, and automatically all the functions of s comes inside, and only functions of x is outside the inner integral, but still it is inside the outer integral. Say this is now a function of x varies from 0 to infinity, and now this is s varies from 0 to infinity. Previously s is outside, x is inside. Now x become outside. This is the changing the order of integration. If you change the order of integration, you have to carefully write the functions which are the functions of x. Yes, it should be inside ds, and which are the functions of x alone. It comes in there inside dx, right? So now you can see what is this, right? You can see this. This is nothing but the definition of inverse Fourier cosine transform of the function f of x. This is that definition of by Fourier inverse cosine transform. So this is f inverse. This is f inverse of inverse Fourier cosine transform, f inverse of FCS. But when you apply inverse function for the original function f of x, what do you get? You get back to the original function f of x, right? So this is f inverse of inverse Fourier cosine transform formula is root of 2 by pi FCS cos x dx, right? So by definition, this is f of x. So you write f of x here, and this g of x is here. The whole thing is nothing but f of x, and this is d of x. Now you can see LHS is this, RHS is this. So what is the difference? Order is immaterial, because in integration, integral sin x into cos x is same as integral cos x into sin x. So inside the integral, order is immaterial. Integral x square cos x is same as integral cos x into x square, right? So they write f of x into g of x, and they proved that, right? So these two are equal. These two are equal. That means if you take any two functions and product it and then you find the integral is same as finding the transforms and then integrate it. That is finding the Fourier cosine transform and then integrate it. Both are same, right? In the similar manner, you can prove it the same thing for sine transforms also. So this side is same, fx and gx is same. So whatever is true for Fourier cosine is same for Fourier sine also. Same for Fourier sine also, right? So I think this is sufficient for the properties. So now I'll teach you some one or two problems based on these properties, some important problems in examination point of view, right? So with that we can wind up. So we'll already take some 15 more minutes, 5 minutes for each and every problem, and we can finish it off. Right. So this is a problem using partial identity, because using partial identity there are some problems, right? So here they are asking using partial identity evaluate this integral, right? But they have to give an hint. This in some book they give this hint, right? If the hint is not given, only I think you have to remember this. There is no other way, right? So if they ask using partial identity, you have to evaluate this integral. But remember, this is only an integral. This integral can be evaluated in any manner. There's no need to use only Fourier transform. But here you have to use Fourier transform. Particularly, you have to use partial identity to evaluate this. Right? For that, we have to consider the function e power minus ax, e power minus ax, and then we try to find the Fourier sine transform of e power minus ax. In some book, they ask some question. They ask find Fourier transform of e power minus ax. Then ask using that you evaluate this. So only in that manner only for your level they will ask. So they will ask find the Fourier sine transform of e power minus ax, and then evaluate this. Right? Then only you can understand. Suppose if they are not given, right, for this type of problem, you have to take f of x as e power minus ax. Right? And then in the numerator as well as in the denominator, if you have x term, listen carefully. Here x is the variable. Both in the numerator as well as in the denominator, if you have the variable, you have to find the Fourier sine transform. Why? I will tell you now. Right? By definition, Fourier sine transform definition is square root of 2 by pi. What are the function given? Sinus x into dx. So what is the function given? E power minus ax into sinus x dx. Now this is a typical integral. For this integral, you can't use your usual Bernoulli's formula or UDV rule. So it has a special formula is there. I write the formula here. If you want to note down, you can note down, or it is there in some formula books also there. That is integral e power ax cos bx. Limit is immaterial, whatever may be the limit. Integral e power ax cos bx is defined as e power ax by a square plus b square. It works for all limits into a cos bx plus b sin bx. This is the formula for integral e power ax cos bx. Integral e power ax cos bx. So here in this integral, that in place of a, minus a is there. In place of a, minus a is there. Similarly, in place of b, s is there. That is the only change, right? Limits, no problem. Whatever the limits, it will work. 0 to infinity. So they write e power minus ax. So here e power minus ax, a square plus b square. So here a square plus s square, because in place of b, s is there. Then a. So in place of a, here minus a is there. So that they put minus a sin bx. That is sinus x, right? And for so for sine it is minus. Okay, this is sine is there. So for sine it is a sin bx. So I write it for cos. Okay, I write it for sine also. Minus b cos bx. Right? So e power ax by a square plus b square, that is same. So red color is for cos e power ax cos bx, blue color is for e power ax sin bx. So here it is sin is there, right? So in place of a, right, minus a is there, so that you put minus a, then sin bx. Sin bx is nothing but sinus x. Then you have to put minus b. Minus b means minus, what is b? Yes. So s into cos x. So so this formula is applied here. E power ax, that is e power minus ax, a square plus b square, that is a square plus s square. See here, even though a is minus a, but when you square it, it became a positive number. So here a is only a number, not a complex number. It is only a number. So if you square minus a, it becomes plus a square. And then a sin bx. So in place of a, minus a is there. So it put minus sin. In place of bx, s is there. So a is minus a in the formula and b is yes. So according to that, if you substitute, right, you will get this. Right? So once you get all these things, you have to substitute the limits, right? So when you substitute the upper limit, e power minus infinity goes to 0. So upper limit won't come, right? Then whatever the value here, sine and cos always take the value 1 from between minus 1 to plus 1, so it won't affect. So when apply the upper limit become 0, because e power minus infinity is 0. When you apply the lower limit, e power 0 is 1. So that is 1 by a square plus s square as it is. A square plus s square as it is. Now if you put x is equal to 0, right, because you're integrating with respect to x is equal to 0, sine 0 0, and cos 0 is 1. So sine 0 0 means this term won't come, and here cos 0 1, so minus s will come, so it is minus s. But already this is upper limit minus lower limit, so this minus n become plus, so it become s by s square plus a square. So what is this? This is Fourier sine transform. So spelling mistake is there. This is Fourier sine transform of the function e power minus ax. Now using this, as far as the partials, using the partials identity, we have to evaluate this integral, right? So what is the partials identity for Fourier sine transform? So this is the partials identity for Fourier sine transform, right? 0 to infinity f of x square is same as 0 to infinity f of s square. That is Fourier sine transform square. So now what you have to do now? Very simple. In place of f of x, what is f of x? E power minus ax. Then f of ss. What is f of ss? That only we found now. Right? What is that? Square root of 2 by pi s into a square plus s square. Right? You simply put that thing in the left hand side. That is s square into a square plus square the whole square. Right? So this also square, this also square. And root of 2 by pi, if you square it, it becomes simply 2 by pi. Right? So now you just integrate this. Before that, you just square comes inside, becomes power. So e power minus x whole square is e power 2x. So e power minus ax the whole square is e power minus 2ax. If you integrate this in the right hand side, you will get 1 by 2a. And if you take this 2 by pi on the other side, then it becomes pi by 2. Then becomes pi by 2. So then this is pi by 2 into 2, 4a. 2 into 2, 4a. So that in the right hand side, it becomes pi by 4a. But what is the left hand side? In the left hand side, right, here ds, s is the variable square divided by a square plus s square the whole square, right? So now you look at the integral given, right? So here x is the variable square divided by constant square, the variable square, the whole square, right? So in place of x, here s is there. In place of x, here s is there. So as I told already, right? So if f of x equal to x square or f of t equals to t square, but t and x are only the representation. So f of x to x square and f of t equals to t square both represents same curve. Similarly, right, here s is the variable, here x is the variable. So this representation and this representation are one and the same, right? So this integral value is straight away is equals to pi by 4a. Pi by 4a. So just evaluating the right hand side and take this 2 by pi on the other side, we easily found this integral. Otherwise, finding this integral is become a bigger one, right? You have to work out certain things, then only you can integrate this. But using Fourier transform, particularly partial identity, we can easily evaluate this. But again, I'm telling this is not the application of Fourier transform, right? So this is some of the applications in the mathematics itself. For just like in Fourier series, evaluating some infinite series, we use Fourier series representation. Similarly, in Fourier transform, evaluating certain integrals, we use the Fourier transform representation. But as I told already, the real applications in the real world problems is there in the wave theory. That is whether it is electrical waves or thermal waves or sound waves, whatever may be, it is in the wave theory, right? Okay. So now similar problems we will see, similar type of problems, but why I'm telling this similar type of problems they are asking again and again in the examination, right? So see, you can see itself in Anna University they asked so many times, nearly 6 or 7 times they asked, right? So here also they are asking evaluate this integral using transform techniques. So here also you have to take f of x as e power minus ax and g of x of e power minus bx. But here the numerator nothing is there, only constant is there. So if this is the integration, you have to use Fourier cosine transform, not sine transform. If the variable is there in the numerator also, then you have to use Fourier sine transform. Fourier sine transform. But if there is nothing in the numerator, right? If nothing in the numerator, it is simply 1 by. Then you have to use Fourier cosine transform. Again, same thing, Fourier cosine transform definition. And this only I just now told, right? E power ax cos bx is e power ax by a square plus b square. A cos bx, a is minus a. So a cos bx is cos x plus b sin bx. So b is nothing but s. So s is here sin bx. Sin bx means sin sx. So just now I told integral e power ax cos sx formula, right? So that formula you have to apply here, and then you have to put 0 to infinity limits. And here when you put limit, again same thing. When you substitute the upper limit, the e power infinity becomes 0. So upper limit is 0. When you substitute the lower limit, x is equals to 0. Remember, x is equal to 0. Cos 0 becomes 1. So this is minus a comes here. Minus a comes here. Minus a by the d square plus s square there. Already what minus sign is outside there. That is upper limit minus lower limit. And here when you put x is equal to 0, sin 0 become 0. So this term won't come. So here minus sign is there. Here minus sign is there. So it is a by s square plus a square. So a is a constant. Particularly a and b are positive things, positive constants. So this is a by s square plus b square. So in the similar way, you can find Fourier cosine transform of e power minus bx. So what is the change between e power minus ax and e power bx? Both are represent same function. Here constant is a, here constant is b. So if you find Fourier cosine transform of e power minus bx, what is the only change? In place of a, b will come. B by s square plus b square. Right? So this is the Fourier cosine transform of e power minus ax. This is the Fourier cosine transform of e power minus bx. Now we use the partials identity, right? So this is also partials identity because this is derived from partials identity. This also tells both sides the density is same, so that it is also called as partials identity, right? So this is the relation just now we have seen. Even if you find the product of the two functions, then integrate, that is same as finding the product of the Fourier cosine transforms and then integrate it. But only thing is limit are 0 to infinity. So now what you have to do is simply substitute, right? This 0 to infinity as it is. What is Fourier cosine transform of f of x? Just now we found root of 2 by pi a by square plus a square. That's you substitute here. Similarly, g of s. What is g of s? Just now we found g of s is root of 2 by pi b by a square plus b square. And then f of x into g of x. F of x is e power minus ax. G of f6 e power minus bx. E power minus bx. Now, here a and b are constant taken out. Root 2 into root 2 becomes 2. Root pi into root pi becomes 5. So 2ab by pi comes outside. Root 2 into root 2 becomes 2. Root pi into root pi becomes 5. A into b comes outside. Because all are constants. And here e power a into e power b is e power a plus b. That we know. Right? So e power minus a plus b of x. Now if you integrate this, e power minus a plus b of x, you will get e power minus a plus b of x divided by minus a plus b. And when you substitute the upper limit, it becomes e power minus infinity, that is 0. When you substitute the lower limit, it is e power 0 is 1. But upper limit 0 minus lower limit is 1. But already you have minus sign here. So minus of minus become plus. So it is 1 by a plus b. The right hand side is 1 by a plus b. And in the left hand side, this pi 2ab by pi, take this side, it be as pi by 2ab. Pi by 2ab. Right? 2ab by pi becomes pi by 2ab. Right? So now you can see. Right? Right hand side is pi by a plus b into 2ab. And in the left hand side, you can see ds and s square plus a square and s square plus b square. And you just check that is same as the given integral. Right? There in x, here it is in s. Variable x, x square plus a square, x square plus b square. Here variable s square plus a square and x square plus b square. So that is equals to this. That is equals to this. Right? So just you can prove that that is equals to pi by 2ab into a plus b, right? So then you can put any value for a and b and you can say, right? Remember this, not only this. If suppose a is 2, then you will get 4 here. B is 3, then you will get 9 here. Automatically this is nothing but pi by 2 a into b. 9 into 4, 36 into a plus b. 9 plus 4, 13. Then you will get a number. Right? Suppose if you assume some particular values for a and b's, then you will get the integral values in a nice manner. Right? Okay. So now we move on to the final problem. The final problem is nothing but similar to the problem number 7. Only thing is in problem number 7, there is no variable in the numerator. But in problem 8, x square in the numerator. So whenever the variable in the numerator, right, same problem, right, you have to take e power ax and e power bx, but you have to find the Fourier sine transform of e power minus ax and e power minus bx.